Hello, everyone. Good evening to everyone here and the audience who has come. Thank you for coming and listening to my talk over here on 3D printing infringement. I am Govind Kumar Chaturvedi. I'm a trademark attorney with LS Dower. LS Dower is the oldest Indian IP origin firm in India and one of the most trusted IP law firms. I would like to thank WIPA for giving me this chance to come and talk. My topic today would be on 3D printing infringement. Basically, how trademark infringement takes place in 3D printing. Are we ready for it in Indian context? Do we have the proper legal landscape for it? How is the foreign situation? And if a case were ever to come up in India, would we be able to deal with it? So without much further ado, I'd start with the presentation. So the contents of the said topic will be very brief and as follows. First, we'll talk about the brief history of IP and 3D printing. The reason we'll do this is because it gives us an explanation why there has been an explosion in 3D printing in the 2010 era and why it has become so ubiquitous and now for household use while it wasn't even the case a few years ago. Then we'll talk about the unique intersection of 3D printing and trademark law, which is digital goods, which are CAD files. We are not aiming to stop 3D printing if we cannot stop the CAD files beyond that carry that particular image or the information needed for the 3D printer to print that information or that infringing good. We'll talk about the role of CAD files, how they're digital goods, various case laws on it. Then we talk about digital goods in an Indian context, 3D printed and the unique problem versus 3D and shape marks. And finally, the conclusion, are we ready? Well, I'll answer that right now. We are. Without much further ado, let's go on to the first topic, the brief history of IP of 3D printing. Now, way before everything else, one of the first, the whole history of 3D printing starts with Charles W. Two patents basically. The first one by Charles W. Hull applied for a patent for stereolithography. The illustration of it is on the right, and you can see the schematic representation of it. This was basically selected. The laser would eliminate selectively transparent bottom, and the tank would go up, and it would fill with liquid photopolymerizing resins. What this would do is that it would solidify the resins and progressively dragged up by a lifting platform, which would then make an object which was a 3D object in real life from a file online. Chuck Hall is also the co-founder for 3D System, which is one of the premier places for 3D printing. It was for a long time. The reason I say it was because at that time, stereolithography is a very expensive process of 3D printing. In that, what happens is what they would use 3D printing is not like what we use today for everyday prints or for even infringement. It wasn't that cheap. They used to make prototypes like motherboards, very specific prototypes for defense or Silicon Valley, something that requires extreme precision to be made into the real world, something from a file to a real world. That was what their work was, and they were only in the business of making prototypes. This is his patent, as you can see, filed in 86, expires in 2006. That'll get relevant as we move on in the conversation. Look on the top left side, apparatus for production of three-dimensional objects by stereography, inventor Charles W. Hull. There's a brief abstract over here if you would like to go through with it. A system for generating three-dimensional objects by creating a cross-sectional pattern of objects to be formed at selected surfaces, which is basically what we do is slicing nowadays, of a fluid medium capable of altering its physical state in response to appropriate similarization stimulation by impure radiation and particle bombardment or chemical reaction, the various ways it can go ahead. The second person that also contributed to the what we know the industry of 3D printing is S. Scott Crump in 1989 invented the fuse deposition model. Now, as of today, the fuse deposition modeling is the most used way of 3D printing. Now, this is why it becomes very important. His patent plays a major part, which fuses material layer by layer until a 3D project, which is we mostly see in those GIFs of those, the videos going up. Crump invented and patented FDM technologies with his wife. She's the co-founder. He also has a company. He is the chairman of the board of directors, Titus, which has additive manufacturing machine for direct digital manufacturing, aka rapid manufacturing. By the way, prior to 2010, 3D printing was known as rapid manufacturing. So this is his patent, and as you can see now, this becomes important. 30th, you can see in 2009, it expires. Now this is the very important part. This is where the reason the entire 3D printing industry came into the force. The reason it was this was because in 2009 these two patents expire. People move from a B to B. Like I said earlier, they were making prototype for industries like computers or defense. Now they moved on to making something and saying that we can make these 3D printers cheaper. We can put cheaper material in them to make cheaper 3D objects. They moved from a B2B to a B2C concept, which was selling it to the consumer. Now, when they sold the BTC to the consumer, the market exploded post 2010. And as I've already said, fused depositing modeling is the most commonly used way of making 3D objects from a 3D printer, which expired in 2009. Prior to that, they couldn't have. Now, one of the other things is that also a very important fact about this is that Kickstarter, the online funding platform, also was also very key in this because they really helped with 3D printing, because people started putting out their money over there and people started actually raising it for their own businesses. It also had a major part to play. Now, we come on to the aspect. This is what has been the history of it, why the Landsat. And the point is that at this point, it has been described as the third revolution. There's a brilliant article on this in the Harvard Business Review, that how 3D printing is going to get rid of the entire chain, that you have those workers of fitting together functions. Now you can make one solid object, so you don't need to have a function of making people putting together thing. It's going to get rid of the assembly line altogether. And when it does, this is going to be the third industrial revolution, where it will make everyone a manufacturer. With a cheap 3D printer at home, with enough raw material, you could make 1,000 pieces of anything and sell it on the. And with e-commerce, it's becoming very easy. So this is going to be where everybody is going to move from a consumer to a manufacturer point of view. And this is why it's very important at this point, trademark infringement, the IP and everything of established companies are protected. However, 3D printing cannot take place until unless you have a CAD file, a computer-aided design. Simply put, it is the use of computers to help in creation, modification, analysis, or optimization of design. So it is just not creation, it's also scanning and putting things together on an already based real world object. These CADs can be scanned of real world objects or be entirely created on computer. So the procedure from a CAD to printing is such. You receive a CAD file. First, it is changed from that format into a standard triangle language. This is basically the reason it's a triangle is to triangulate the position in 3D object real world. Then it will go on to slicing. This is basically slicing and dividing chopping the 3D model into horizontal layers for the computer to be easily read, for the printer to easily read and recreate. And finally is the printing step. Now, if someone were to get a CAD file, and CAD files in itself could be software infringement, but if it's a trademark product and he does 3D printing and he uses it for commercial use, it is trademark infringement. There have been many cases where such digital goods have been caught into question. So this is a very unique problem where the good doesn't exist in the real world. You have to catch it in the cyberspace itself before it comes into the real world. Your litigation should start at that level. Now, for that, we just need to understand the normal history of digital goods, how digital goods function, or how digital goods are, or how we've described them in the years to come. Well, simply put, a digital good is something which exists in cyberspace, but could be infringing yours. Now, a similar case like this was filed by a small strip joint against Rockstar Videos in their game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. In that, what had happened was basically the video game developers had gone to the streets in Los Angeles and they had recreated that in the game, and they saw this, this strip club, and they just made a similar. The name of the strip club was the Playpen. Over here, they named it the Pigpen. And the only difference was, well, not the color and everything, whereas outside looks were similar. So they filed a case and everything. However, the case was thrown out by the district and the Ninth Circuit for the simple reason stating that the difference in consumer service was too much. No video game developer, guy playing a video game will not assume that person has a strip club. However, that case was thrown out for that reason. So, but this was the first time that actually a digital good was brought into question. A good that didn't exist in the real world was the basis for a case of a trademark infringement. Similar case again happens. Bell Helicopter versus Electronic Arts. We all have played Battlefield Vietnam, Battlefield Redux, Battlefield 2. There is a certain type of Bell Helicopter. It's got a cult status. It's also featured in a lot of movies. It was made by this particular defense manufacturer who went ahead and filed a case against this Electronic Arts, which basically made Battlefield, saying they cannot use it. However, there is an exception in US, and I was even curious to find that about, is that in any usage of these things in video games is fair use under the First Amendment. So technically, anything they recreate in a video game is so. However, they would still held the defendants liable. But however, again, the in both matters, the prior matter and this one also, these things were settled out of court. Then again, then we had the Marvel character over here. What happened was that the plaintiff, basically Marvel, as we know, took certain characters of them, and in an NC Soft game, they had basically put those characters. However, they were not for commercial use. So again, that was thrown out, and they said these were not being used. However, that's the first time that a lot of times that these cases have taken place where digital goods are kind of a problem because they're in tangible form. And a lot of times the wordings of acts or case laws is that they have to be tangible, sold, or in real world terms. However, how does the Indian context look at it? If such a thing was supposed to take in India, and not for copyright, but for trademark, how would we deal with it? We move on to the Indian context here for that. Now, honestly put, in India, infringement claims to digital goods have not yet surfaced, but under Section 21J, goods are defined as anything which is subject to trade or manufacture. Hence, a CAD file which is being bought or sold, which it is, these CAD files are sold on websites for a certain sum. They are the subject of trade. Hence, they can be subject for trademark infringement. Hence, so you could look at it in a court of law. In fact, the liability of such intermediaries is also defined. So, as we already know, intermediary law is such in India that you have to send the notice, you have to get the person, or you go to court authority, and the court has to make sure that the person listens. So, in such a case, the intermediary liability is also well defined. So, if there is a digital good which is on a particular place being sold, you have the ambit of the intermediary liability and the Trademark Act to go look at it from that point of view. But you have to look more into it. That's not the entire case. It's a much longer story here. One such case did take place, how it was in terms of software, but it was for property, which was copyright. And in UTV software versus Elite 220, the Delhi High Court laid down the definition of rogue website, which is very important because a lot of these things, these CAD files will start being dealt with on rogue websites, which were hosting copyright material on their online film to streaming platforms. In the present matter, the plaintiff sought injunction against defendants, which was given, and which was basically given globally, including India. Finally, the court directed the Imiti and the Dot, who are defendants in this case, with a policy where individuals who have access to pirated content can be notified of the same by ISPs, which is internet service providers, and if they don't differ from country restrictions, they may be fined. So it was very well defined. However, this is just not the problem that comes with it. You will say that go on the counterfeit goods. They're goods which are just not exactly the same. What if he just uses the exact good without using the trademark? You're right. But the problem that has come, and this is something 3D shape marks have been there for eons together, for like literally 100, we could say a number of years. But in recent, at least in the Indian Trademark Office, I've seen a major trend where 3D shape marks registrations have increased humongously. Even the smallest traders are going for 3D shape marks. Hence, I could not use your trademark, but I could just, if I recreate the shape of your product, I could be in trouble. Because I have used something, I have ill-gotten something which is protected by trademark registration, actually. So, which basically, we all know the statutory rights are way higher over here. So, when the trade rests, like let's say someone wants a Volkswagen at home, right? He wants a small miniature Volkswagen. If he prints it, not even sells it. Let's say even if he's selling it for commercial gain, or he's printing it as a hobbyist, could still attract the provisions of the statutory provisions of the Trademark Act. Not just this, you have bottles over here. This is a bottle protected by Bacardi under the particular trademark application. Over here, now this is what I was trying to say, that 3D shape marks are getting registered. This is the 3D shape mark for an entire machine. This must be a huge machine, which in itself has been trademarked over here. They have the Yakult also bottle protected over here. That's just to give you an idea that these are the 3D shape marks that are there. You should be careful the ones you are, even as a hobbyist, you're taking out. I'm not saying, yes, you have to have commercial interest, but even as a hobbyist, it could be a problem. Now, one such example where this happened, where hobbyists were caught, or, this entire situation where entire company and everything, intermediary liability, where this has happened, has been in BMW suing TurboSquid. Now, what was TurboSquid? TurboSquid was a company that made exactly these 3D models, CAD files, and sold them on the night. They could sell it for a price. Now, if you were going for a BMW car model or CAD file, it will always be more expensive than a normal car. So this is the reason that they were selling these files. The problem that came up was that these 3D files, all of these were actually protected by DICE design patents, something like 3D, trademark registrations. So BMW went out and filed a case. These are all the 6 cars on the basis of which the cases were filed. You will find the design patent number on the bottom left corner of every image. And they basically filed the case. Of course, TurboSquid retreated, stated this was not ours. They tried to come up with a defense. They couldn't. Eventually, it was settled out of court. It left the question of what is the digital good again open for debate for the American public. But, is this open for the Indian context? Not really. And why I'll say so here. And I'll explain it very well, at least from my point of view. In India, we do have, I would suggest that, if you are our client and why this is actually the advice to the clients also, to making a stronger portfolio of what they want to do. And second of all, this is also how to deal with the 3D infringement matter if it was to come out. So first, if you are a client, get your first file certified CAD files, which can only be opened by a certain password or by certain keys or something. And when you sell them, there will definitely be a hallmark that they've come from you, or there's a perfect source indication. Now, second thing is, if you have goods, please, if they're distinctive, file your 3D shape trademarks as soon as possible, because they could just recreate the object and then you might just lose your rights on it, because if they do it too much, or if they just like claim that you never had rights on it, it was too generic or common to trade, any of those things, any defense they put up would be less stronger in a statutory infringement suit versus in a common law passing off. So it is always more smarter to get your 3D shape of the goods, at least for the goods manufacturers, definitely. And they have to be unique. There are certain parameters that you should fall within. Once you fall within parameters, please go ahead and get your registration. Now, however, CAD files, as we know, are software source code. So under 14A1 of the copyright says that you can protect copyright in any medium. A source code is CAD file, and source code can be regarded and protected as original artistic or literary works. So if there is a CAD file floating around, which is again, you can file a copyright infringement matter if it is something that it lets you protect it in any medium. So even if it's a physical object of copyright and artistic work you've made, and they've taken a photo and they're scanning and circulating it for 3D printing, well, they can't. They honestly can't. You are protected under 14A1 of the Copyright Act, because you have a right to your copyright in all mediums. Second, 14C1 of the Indian Copyright say that any conversion of a 3-dimensional object into a 2D form would be exclusive right of the author and the artistic work. Meaning what? If there's an artistic work, there's a statue, there's anything that is protected by copyright, if I was to take a photo and convert it from a 3D image into a 2D or vice versa, I would be infringing the rights of the author, because those are the exclusive rights of the author. Now, another thing, a lot of things people are thinking, and this I've heard a lot, is that people think that they start making spare parts, they'll start making things for the machines with the 3D printing. Never this is for the clients, never. Always do a paid research for these products and everything, and make sure that they're not patented or something that you're doing. Could be a problem in the future, never know. You could just, because you would be using it through commercial use. Finally, Design Act won't apply, I believe, because simply put, design 2D, section 2D of the Design Act, that's my opinion, says that it should be applied on an article, mostly since you're stopping 3D printing at the CAD file stage, it would be not exactly that simple. It won't be simply meaning that won't just come under the Design Act. But that's my point of view. Of course, I'm on the first piece. With that, I will say thank you to everyone for bearing with me and like just going through lecture. I hope you found some information that you could be useful or be any good. And I'm open for questions. Please leave it in the comments box. Leave any questions. I'd be more than happy to answer. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.